We're recording.
Meeting will come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
We have Commissioners Fleming, Funderburk, Levine, and Noonan present.
Next item is Channel 35. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. And the next item is opening remarks by me, and I have none. And the next item is report or briefing by the General Manager, including reports from Water, Power, and Administrative System Management. General Manager has changed appearance since the last meeting. Mr. Interim General Manager, do you have a report or a briefing?
No reports, and there'll be briefings at the end of the agenda.
Thank you. Comments from commissioners on agendized items and requests from commissioners relating to departmental operations?
I did have a comment, Mr. President. I attended the Congress of Neighborhood Councils a week ago, and I just want to thank the DWP staff who are on the road show for all of these events that DWP sponsors in and around the area to support energy efficiency and water conservation. There were 6 people in particular: Greg Bartz, Carol Tucker, Balu Onyedika, Cecile Cornell, Christina Kush, and Reggie Brewer, our own Reggie, who were were out there. Commissioner Barad was there. I know she's not here, but I know that for both of us, we were very proud to see DWP showing its positive face to a lot of the influential neighborhood council and other people at City Hall. So I just wanted to recognize those people for the good work that they do and continue to do.
Thank you, and thank you for being there as well.
Welcome.
Other comments from commissioners? Barbara, do we have any public comment cards?
I have none.
Comments from ratepayer advocate on agendized items?
We will have at the time a comment at the end of the presentation item on number 25.
Okay.
And if the commissioners have any questions on the items coming up, we'll comment as needed.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to say as part of our rate review, we have hired a consultant to help with the core rate review, and that's Navigate Consulting. They're underway, and we're also doing a total compensation study as part of this, and we almost have the consultant for that in place.
Almost. I won't ask you to define almost. Thank you very much. Approval of minutes for the special board meeting of September 8th and the special board meeting of September 22nd. Well, let's see, on the first one, all commissioners were present, and on the second one, those commissioners who are here were present. So I can take a motion on both.
No.
No?
No, because I wasn't there for the second, so you get to separate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're correct. Okay, those in favor of approving the minutes of September 8th, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's approved. And for September 22nd, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. The consent calendar currently stands as items 7 through 20. Do any commissioners wish to remove any items from the consent calendar? I'm not really looking at you.
I saw that look.
Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve items 7 through 20?
I'll move.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
They're approved.
Clear the room.
That should make a number of people's days easier. And we move to the regular agenda, item 21, power contract numbers 667A and 667B for medium voltage cable with Talhan Electric USA Ltd. and the Okanite Company.
So this is a normal and routine purchase to enable us to have cable for underground transmission and our distribution. It helps us with new installations, our load growth. It also allows us to replace some of the old and deteriorating cable that's occurring on our system. And so by having this in stock, it allows our crews to respond extremely rapidly to any outages that occur. Now, to give you a kind of some context on this is that for our lower voltage cable, 4.8 kV, is that serves typically 500 to 700 customers. So if there's an outage on one of those cables, it takes several hours to locate the cable, isolate the repair, and to put these replacements in. So when we have outages, it impacts a number of customers for quite some time. So having the stock in place will speed up our response. And for the higher voltage cable, the 34.5, it's 8 times the number of customers that can be impacted, as well as industrial, commercial, hospitals, et cetera. So having those resources ready is a prudent business practice that we've been doing for decades.
Questions from commissioners? Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Item 22, water supply assessment for the North Hollywood West project.
This is a item that we brought to the board last meeting. It was deferred for a vote until this meeting. Dave Pettyjohn has done some follow-up and provided a memo to all the commissioners in response to questions that were raised during last meeting, and he's prepared to answer any questions if you have any.
Hello, President Levine, Commissioners. As Marty said, I'm Dave Pettyjohn. I'm the Director of Water Resources here at LADWP, and with me today is Delon Kwan. And Delon is the manager of our Resource Development Group. And you did raise some concerns and some questions about the North Hollywood West project and in general about the board's approval of water supply assessments. Before you is our written response, and we're happy to answer any questions, as Marty mentioned.
Do commissioners have any questions?
I did have a comment. I wanted to thank Mr. Pettyjohn and, I'm sorry,
Delon Kwan.
Delon, for the time they spent and the effort that was put into bringing me more up to speed on how these water supply assessments work and the role that the commission plays, the limited role that we play in concert with the planning department on dealing with new projects. I am supportive of this as it's presented to us, but I do want to make sure that the message is heard loud and clear to anyone in our water supply assessment group that is dealing with new project developers, and that is that the offset amount for this project, which is 6%, that the project proponent voluntarily put forward as a mitigation, not in a CEQA context, but in this context. I think the department should continue to try to offset and ask project developers to offset the use of water, lest other interested parties get involved in the issue. So I think that if you can make sure that at least that it's communicated that at least one commissioner has expressed a concern, especially in a drought, even in times when it's going to rain. We had rain. It didn't. Yesterday was a perfect case in point. It rained 1.5 inches someplace. It didn't rain in other places of LA, and so where it rains matters, and whether we get snow matters, and when it comes matters. So I want to, even if we get these supposed El Nino rains, I want to make sure that the projects that come through the pipeline for the water supply assessments are reminded that the offsets that are being offered are appreciated, but personally, I'd like to see more. So at least from my standpoint, that's something that I'm going to ask about. I'd like to also see a little more notice provided on these so that we can be allowed more time to look at the offset calculations and the calculations for the water supply assessments if we're paying attention to those. But thank you again for all of the work you did on the briefing, and I'd like to thank Commissioner Noonan also for her role in deferring it so that I could look at this from a different vantage point. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Thunderberg. That's very helpful input, because we do actually need that type of input. We do sit down with developers prior to bringing these water supply assessments to your board, and knowing that your board is looking very hard at the voluntary conservation that developers are willing to do above and beyond what's required by the city ordinance is very important, because we do impress upon them that there are things that they can do above and beyond the city code requirements. We point out what the types of things that they can do, and it will be meaningful to them that you have this concern, and that and it will help us get additional conservation above and beyond what's required by the city ordinances. So thank you for that.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item 23, energy efficiency savings for energy cost adjustment calculation.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm David Jaco with the Efficiency Solutions Group here at LADWP. I'm actually going to give a quick update on our progress with our energy efficiency portfolio versus our goals, and then I'll hand it over to Jeff Peltola, to discuss the ECAF itself. So just as a reminder, this board adopted a very aggressive target of 15% cumulative energy efficiency by 2020. That means by 2020, energy efficiency will be 15% of the supply needs we've anticipated since 2010. We have a very detailed plan to achieve this. We did an extensive technical potential study in 2014 that demonstrated that we could cost effectively achieve that goal. And we updated our portfolio business plan, which specifically lays out by program how we plan to achieve the goal, obviously with flexibility to adjust on an annual basis. We do regular ongoing reporting, evaluation, program optimization to make sure we stay on track for the goal. And with those efforts, I'm pleased to announce that through the end of fiscal year 2014-15, we're cumulatively 7% ahead of the plan for that 2020 goal. So the plan that laid out the yearly achievements between 2010 and 2020 that are necessary to achieve 15%, we're 7% ahead of. Zooming in specifically to last year's achievements in 14-15, we achieved 296 gigawatt hours of savings, and of that, 167 gigawatt hours is subject to revenue recovery through the ECAF mechanism, which Jeff can go ahead and talk more about.
So energy efficiency, again, is probably the most cost-effective way to meet customer loads. It's more effective than burning fuel, and there are significant environmental benefits to that. However, we need to ensure that our fixed costs are met when we do this. And so if you look on the, in page 3, it talks about a 5.5 cent per kilowatt hour, which is roughly 1/3 of our rates that we collect back for the amount of gigawatt hours that David, as he mentioned, the 167, which we add to the other energy savings from before. This amounts to what we will collect in the, if it's approved, we will collect that in our ECAF starting in January of 2016. This is really something that was put in place in 2006. It's more of a crude method of decoupling. Decoupling is a far better way of doing this, and we'll be doing that when we come to you with the rate proposal. But this is what's in the existing ordinance, so we need to meet this.
Questions, comments? Is there a motion? I move it. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. Thank you very much, and congratulations so far.
Thank you.
Okay, we move to filed items, monthly report for the water system for June.
I have just a few comments, unless there's any questions on the report that was provided to you. Our conservation numbers remain good still at this point. Our average, we're doing a rolling monthly average right now, according to the governor's mandate for the 16% reduction. So we are running just a hair over 18%. So we actually are carrying about a 3,000 plus acre foot credit going forward. That's really important because we're comparing against 2013 as a base year, and so we may have different hot or warm or wet months, during the fall than what we had in 2013. So, but right now we're doing very well. Although you passed the permission to go to 2-day-a-week watering if we needed to, we have not needed to do that. So we continue at 3 days a week watering, and people seem to be voluntarily reducing their use even further than that. Our turf numbers continue to increase. We hope to make a big announcement about reaching some milestones in the next week or two. But we continue to get subscriptions to the turf removal program, even though we're only at our own rebate of $1.75 a square foot. The original $2 in addition to that MWD was provided has gone away, but we're still getting good participation. Next week is actually the 1-year anniversary of the mayor's executive directive number 5. Hard to believe a year has gone by. And there will be a acknowledgement ceremony in early November about the status of the accomplishments that the city's made. Most of the goals have been met. There's many are long-term efforts. Everything is moving right along in accordance with his directive, and so we're looking forward to that. And it'll be a good sign for what the city's done as a whole. And lastly, there's been some recent news reports about particular high water users. In the city, there's our highest residential water user has been in the news a lot recently. We are doing measures to try to encourage more conservation amongst our highest users. As you know, we don't regulate how much water someone can buy, but we do regulate what would be a wasteful use, such as through the water conservation ordinance, as opposed to how often and how long you can water and that sort of thing. So we are taking some steps now, and I'll plan to have a report back probably early November as to exactly what measures we're doing to address the very highest customers, there's a handful that are considerably higher than the rest of the normal high of large property owners. So.
We've read about them. Comments, questions? Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Renewable Portfolio Standard Projects, August.
As well as the power system update. I'll take 2 and 3 together.
Okay,
First,
all right.
on the power system. Recently, we've had an outage on the Inyo Rinaldi transmission line, and the purpose of that was to integrate our Beacon substation to get ready to bring in all the solar projects. And the team has done a fantastic job of starting that outage and finishing that outage right on time. And it was really important because we have wind projects that are already tying into that. We have hydro from the Owens Valley that comes through those lines. So I'd like to give credit to the teams that are focusing on schedule, starting, stopping, completing the work on time on these major projects. So I want to recognize them for that. Also wanted to let you know that Scattergood Generating Station, there's 3 gas turbines that are being commissioned out there. Some are quick start and some are part of a combined cycle. We have finished first fires on all 3 of those units on schedule. Major project at Scattergood, a lot of construction activities are going on, a lot of support staff, both contract and engineering wise, and they hit their targets on Scattergood. So we are really pleased with that. We are scheduling presentations for this board so we can go over some of these major projects. So at the right time, we can tell you more about Scattergood, more about what's happening at Beacon, et cetera, and we'll do that over the course of time. On the RPS, wanted to mention that we believe that the governor will be signing the SB 350 tomorrow. And so what that will do is increase our renewable percentage to 40% by 2024. So we don't change to 33% by 2020, but we have to accelerate to 40 and to go to 50% by 2030. So there's a lot of work that's going to occur on that. So the integrated resource plan normally this is just an updated plan, but this time we're going to have to change some of these cases to reflect this new state requirement. So there's going to be a lot of work going into that integrated resource plan to figure out how we're going to comply with that. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention is that we've been working well ahead of this because we put a 50% plan in last year in anticipation that this could happen. So we've finished phase 1 of our integration study, so we now know how much we need. Phase 2 will be, well, what technologies can we use to help integrate renewable energy? And how much did that cost? How much are we willing to pay for that? As we finish up phase 2, that will help us then drive what it's going to take us to get to 50%. We're also looking at the transmission needs more aggressively now. Is what transmission modifications are we going to need to make to make sure that we can bring 50% into the system. So those studies have already been occurring. We've had some presentations prepared that management has seen, so we can start moving forward on some of those upgrades to get ready for the future. And then last, I wanted to mention is that Don Campbell 2. It's a 16 megawatt plant. It doesn't sound like a lot, but we get a tremendous amount of energy out of a geothermal facility. And it contributes 0.7% to our RPS because it runs all the time and we don't have to integrate it. That came 14 months ahead of schedule. The timing couldn't have been better because with it ahead of schedule, it helped replace some of the small hydro we're losing because of the drought. And so kudos to Ormat, who is the project owner and manager and who we have the PPA with. They've done a terrific job and want to recognize the entire team for making that happen.
Thank you very much. Impressive and challenging and appreciated. Those briefings you'll provide on some of the major systems will be very helpful. Comments, questions? Thank you, Mike. Investment report for the quarter ending June 30th, 2015.
Not unless there's any questions.
Any questions? No questions. Management report, Power System Reliability Program, fiscal year 14-15 report.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm John Dennis, the Director of Power System Planning and Development, and with me is Muklas Buyan. He's the manager of our grid planning. And we just have 7 slides just to give you a quick overview of our Power System Reliability Report. It's in your packet there. We gave a similar report just about a year ago on the status of the Power System Reliability Program with the various goals, and we'd just like to give you highlights for the fiscal year 14-15 and a few notes about where we're at currently in this quarter. As part of our power system reliability, the key actions really that we're seeing is that the challenges before us are to ramp up. It's going to be involved with both people as well as equipment, procurement, all those elements that are necessary to meet the goals and the targets of the reliability program. So we're ramping up, establishing the budgets and the scopes that are within that, and then to track and to monitor and adjust to the performance of the program. So again, the goal is to maximize the benefits to our infrastructure for generation, transmission, and distribution. On the next slide is with our generation side, I'll speak on just briefly, and that is just to give you the total counts and just some kind of dollar numbers associated with each of these activities that are associated, and to see where some of these we achieved those goals and some we didn't, but there's some items that are underway on our overhauls and our major transformers and inspections that we do. While we met the goals for the major inspections on our thermal and hydro, we are still falling behind, or did for this last year, for our transformers. And the transformers right now, we expect to have those contracts to this board for recommendation of award in January of 2016, and 2 transformers will be on that recommendation for award. But in the meantime, though, on some of our large transformers, we did do some rebuild of some older transformers to make sure those are going to last long, and for our generator transformers there. So there was some sizable work. 2 transformers were reconditioned at our Harbor Generating Station. One other quick note on this one, and that is, though these are identified major inspections, another quick note was for those 26 thermal units that are there, we have done 34 minor inspections. So when we finish the season, this hot run that we go through for the summers, we'll bring those units down and we'll do some minor inspections to see if there's any problems that are there as the season is closed, see if we need to do any work on those units, and then before the season starts back up, actually the hot season, we'll do some additional minor inspections to make sure everything is ready to go. So we did 34 of those minor inspections on our thermal units and 11 inspections on our hydro units. So there's a lot of activity, in addition, that our crews are out there doing the inspection work, making sure that these units are ready to run when the duty calls.
On the transmission, we started with this underground 138 kV circuits. This table is same what you saw on September 16 with our targets for 14-15. On the right-hand side column gives you the achievement we did, and some of these we are over our target numbers, some of these we are under. Now, work in progress on the 138 kV underground transmission cables. We are ramping up to 2 per year. Oil field cables are the low pressure oil field cables being replaced with cross-linked polyethylene, and we are making progress on those items. Some of those, the last item on maintenance holes in this table deals with, we are using the new infrared technology to replace those manholes with the energized circuits. Previously, we had to take the circuit out to do those replacement work. The next table deals with these substation items. Most of these items deals with transformers and circuit breakers. Transformers is again, it requires purchase and long lead items. Some of those items we had started and didn't achieve the right numbers. But as you can see, some of those are over, some of those under. We are tracking, monitoring, and ramping up and adjusting to achieve our desired numbers. On the distribution items, most of the items we have achieved more than what we set out as our targets. On the poles, with our contract crew, we are ramping up. This work is, the numbers you see here is as of June 30, and June 30 of 2015. The target was 14-15 cycle fiscal year. However, the work didn't start until the beginning of this year or towards the end of last year. So we didn't achieve all the numbers. However, just the latest data we have seen yesterday for July, August, and September is giving you 500 poles in 3 months. That's at a rate of 2,000 poles per year. And so we are ramping up, we are getting there, and hopefully we will, our ultimate goal is 6,000 poles per year.
The next page deals with our budget and our expenditures. Some of our areas are underspending, and these relate to procurement. And I want to make it clear as far as procurement, some of those are items that the engineered product, preparation of the specifications. Gwen and her team are doing a wonderful job trying to keep up with us and all the work that's coming through, and even to your attention for approval. But there are things that our engineering folks need to work on with regards to preparing specifications and getting those ready to advertise, as well as some of these relate to vendor performance and then providing the material, and then also in some of the areas about permitting that have caused some of those underspending. So working with some of those regulatory agencies are also important. The quick shot on this one is just to see that overall spend is at half of the money, and the PSRP is going to the distribution system, out to the lines and wires to our customers, where it'll have its biggest impact. The last slide is just to simply to identify the challenges there and talking about the resources and timelines. We just want to communicate that we're ramping up. Procurement is going to be important for us in the logistics, working with the agencies who permit these particular projects, and above all, safety for our employees that are out there working on these lines and wires, knowing that there's production goals. Our men and women who work out there, they see this, and there's a great interest, but as well to emphasize that safety is important for them too, to not compromise that along the way. We're glad to answer any questions you might have on this report.
Thank you very much. Other questions?
I did, but go ahead, Commissioner. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this report.
Welcome.
In reviewing the cover letter, you outline the deliverables, and number 3, you state prioritization criteria. Sorry, Spanish is my first language. Limitation in funding limitation in funding and resources will necessitate prioritization of capital projects from each sector. Can you elaborate on that? I know that you touched upon it in the budget, and you talk about how many poles we're dealing with now versus 6,000. How is it that you are deciding what to attack first?
A big part of this relates to the getting up to a level of replacement cycles that will reflect the life cycle of those items. So if it's a pole is going to last on the average of 60 years, we want to get to that replacement life cycle of those. So we want to get at that replacement grouping, if you will. And so that's where, as Muklas described, we want to get up to that 6,000 and 7,000 poles per year to do that replacement. So that will set a part of that priority. The other one is with regards to the condition of the equipment as we look at it. So it's not just age-based, but also to know that there is certain equipment that is giving us an indication that it needs to be replaced soon. So that will push that up to the queue early on. One specific example would be, as we look at our large transformers, those are cooled with oil inside to keep the process cool. And so one of the things we do is we pull samples of that oil and we test it to see what is happening inside the large transformer. And by testing that, there's some dissolved gases, and what that tells us a little bit about what's happening in there and the age and condition of the equipment. That used to be something we would do either quarterly or annually. So what we've also done is we've put on some online monitoring devices, and we're seeing how well those will work on our transformers so that we can watch those and we can capture an incident before it becomes a serious situation on there. So that online monitoring equipment will also be helpful as we look at this, the long term and the age of this. Especially those, some of these devices can be replaced rather quickly and have minor implications for outages. Some of these other larger ones, like we talk about the large transformers, those can be up to between 12 to 18 months of delivery after receipt of order. So we realize that the other piece to this is not just replacing the equipment, but having a good strategy for spares and having spares available so we can replace those should something break along the way. So that's a quick synopsis of the prioritization. But we go through all of our capital programs and ranking on that.
That's very helpful. And I know that when we're contemplating budgeting for reliability as well as replacing older infrastructure, that's always taken very seriously. Do you know off the top of your head how our current budget compares to previous years? Have we put more of our revenue from our budget to addressing these issues?
I don't have the percentage, but certainly I do know that we, as I look at our budget director and financial services folks, these are sizable numbers. I don't have that percentage right off the top of my hand, but it is a sizable investment that is being made towards this that has not been dealt with before. I think, Fred, did you have a comment?
Commissioner Funderburk?
Yes, I appreciate the update also, and I think it's great that we're embarking on these upgrades. I know that one of the things that may not be within this particular budget, but that needs to be addressed more from the management standpoint is the reduction in number of employees that we have to support that are retiring. And I would just encourage you to continue to look to programs like the UPCT may not, the pre-craft training program may not fit exactly into this, but look for apprenticeship programs and look locally to people who may not have college educations, but they may be perfectly suitable to doing this work. And I look forward to understanding and hearing more about what our budget is to increase the local employment on, especially on big projects that are labor intensive like this.
At this moment, we have just under 400 people, at least to a report from yesterday, that are in our current training programs at various stages in those apprenticeship programs. A very robust piece of this. But the good thing as well is that they're getting out into the workplace and seeing the work, not only being trained, but your notes are well taken. We'll pass that along to our folks to make sure that that's incorporated.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And just one comment I'd like to make on the spending level. So in last year and the year before, if we compare that spending to what we're proposing in the 5-year action, it's about a 75% increase that we're looking at on the reliability side. And that's actually both on the power side and the water side.
Yeah, I knew it had gone up, the allocation, but I wasn't sure by how much, so thank you.
And with those numbers, I think we're about about half of our capital program is
Yeah, it's something
on, in this area here that we just captured in about 7 pages.
Yeah.
As such, this was a key component of one of the rate pass-throughs. And they've been ramping up this program over the last few years. There's a continuing ramp up of this program. We've been working closely with them over the last couple of years so that we can add some transparency to how this is measured and monitored. And they've been working with us so that we've made a lot of progress in us understanding it and them bringing forward the numbers.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Pickle?
My summary was we've made a lot of progress. There's a little ways to go on this in terms of monitoring it. It's how these numbers are passed through as part of the rate discussion. And we'll be reporting to you on that as part of the overall rate. In addition, the Controller's Industrial, Economic, and Administrative Survey will address part of this in terms of the investment needed ongoing in the system.
Thank you. Other comments? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Council?
We do
Yes,
have
sir.
a speaker for A7.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have a speaker card on a closed session item. Item 26A7, which is Powerhouse Fire, LADWP claim number 1032401, and Thomas Chambers v. LADWP, etc.
Okay, the speaker is Wayne Spindler, and we do then have a card for A13 as well later.
Yes, this gets more interesting by the minute. Turns out, I had some interesting news about this settlement that the prior owner on my property looks like got a settlement. And that must have happened real fast because you only had, after the fire, June 2013, our escrow completed in August 2013, so you must have wrote that check real fast before my title closed, because in my escrow instructions, and I never got a disclosure there was any settlement or claim regarding the property damage. There was personal property that the people were there before, and physical injuries such as smoke inhalation. Those are personal. But as far as the property damage, I didn't know. So now the newest trick is that they want to believe that the floods that happened in 2014 were not a separate incident. Actionable. Well, as an example, the LA County Board of Supervisors in 2014 declared the flood areas in Lake Hughes a disaster. And it seems that your council never knew that. That's the first time they ever heard about that. And then, even though somebody comes to this building personally, goes to your legal department and files a claim in person, gets it conformed, well, they don't have any record of it. And they never had a record of me ever filing any claim on the property back last year. Can't find it. Well, I guess I'm out of luck. Because if I can't find my paperwork, you guys, as far as you're concerned, I missed it, I blew it, right? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, all conformed. I put that in my safe box because I knew, I had a feeling this would happen. How many other people mailed these claims?
Your time is up for that item.
Yeah. How many people mail claims? Now, your little Price Waterhouse, well, congratulations on that. Seems that you got a judge that believes that you should go to trial because Price Waterhouse allegedly defrauded you into accepting their software package. And that's believable. You poor little guys, tiny little electric company, tiny little utility, inexperienced with all this new billing software. And of course the big evil Price Waterhouse, of course, they tricked you into signing that contract for that software. And they defrauded you. You were fooled. And that's why the software didn't work. Not because you did anything wrong, but you got a judge that's going to let you go to court claiming that you were an innocent purchaser and that they misrepresented the software and its effectiveness. As citing an example, they had a contract in Cleveland with another utility, like you, that could not press a button and a reset on a server. So, congratulations to that, but you still have to get to a jury, and you still have to win, and I bet 12 people are gonna sit in that box. Are they really gonna believe you guys don't know how to operate a billing software system? Of course not. So go get them, Price Waterhouse, and like I said, don't give up. The jury will do justice. They will prove you were innocent and that this utility did something stupid with that software, because nobody got bills for a year. I got a bill for 8 months back on an estimated bill. All right, so it's called mitigation. You didn't mitigate your damages even if you had them. So Price Waterhouse, don't give up hope. The people still know that
Your time
you're
is up for
innocent.
that item.
Counsel?
Yes, sir. The board shall report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with Section 54, 957.1 of the California Government Code.
Thank you. We will recess into